Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So, for our introduction, first, let's cover the thing that I forgot to do at the beginning of the video last week. The second channel is going to have a handful of uploads this week. Last week, I think I only uploaded my thoughts on Stellar Blade, and that was like yesterday or the day before when this video releases. So if you're curious about what I thought of the demo of that game, head over to the second channel and subscribe. That's my channel for anything that's not Final Fantasy related, or I guess really not Square Enix related, like Dragon's Dogma stuff is over there, Stellar Blade. Grand Blue. Whenever I just play a game and I want to say something or make some form of content about it over there, that's where stuff goes. And this week I got a few things to catch up on. I think I wanted to do my Unicorn Overlord overall thoughts over there, and one or two other things I had in mind. On the VOD channel, I'm finally uploading Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm uploading my actual Stellar Blade demo gameplay, as well as Honkai Star Rail. I've come back to it after a year. I really only played it for like 4 or 5 hours when it first came out, so it's basically the equivalent of starting new, and I've been streaming that every day for the last several days at this point. So almost to the point where I feel like I want to go to Penacony. So, you know, if you want to tune in for Honkai stuff, it's gonna be the week to do that before the 14-hour broadcast we have on Friday. Now, speaking of which, update. I know I did like a little personal update video last week. I took a few days after that to not record just so I could, you know, mental reset. I did do a little like stream with like a mini kind of fundraiser thing, just like the, you know, looking more like a cash forward essentially. I met that goal within that day, so that's already completely over. I didn't want to make it bigger than it was, so now I'm in that safety category, just so any of you know. I'm not going to turn down anything additional, you know, that would be dumb. I'm a streamer, but you know what I mean. It's all taken care of, and that's now in the past. I'll be good to kind of do my own work as I have been, and don't need to worry about that anymore. Thank you to everyone who did contribute to that, because I was breathing much easier after stream that day. I started doing some shirt giveaways as well over on the Twitch side of the live stream. There's only a few in the pile now. I actually put a bunch in the washer because I spilled something on them earlier today. And they're in the washer coming out the dryer, so that pile will be larger. And I'm shipping those out every week or two as I do giveaways over on Twitch. And that's kind of the schedule that I'm looking at, is do a few giveaways because they were supposed to originally stretch into the 10-year anniversary, but I'm getting other stuff ready for that as well, so we should be a-okay, good to go. Anyway, with that, I didn't want the intro to be that long, but I did have a lot to say, so let's get into the Q&A. Before we go any further, thank you to everyone on Patreon for supporting. Nobody has to support. All my content's available for free here on YouTube, on top of my usual live streaming schedule, which is on Twitch and YouTube. So, you know, just enjoy the channel, but there's always the other options out there. I got to do the usual. Oh, and I'm doing a Factor sponsorship over on Twitch. They do, it's like a subsidiary of HelloFresh where they do pre-made meals, so you don't have to cook anything yourself. They're pretty good. I've used them before, and you know, I've got another sponsorship offer, so that's 50% off the first box. They're not sponsoring this video. I'm just going to throw that in the description because sometimes people like to try those things out, and you might as well save some money if you're going to do that and support the channel. So with that, let's get into the Q&A. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hey, yo, happy. Hello. Hope you're doing well. You too. Now that Dawn Trail has a release date, when can we expect Savage to release? My understanding is about a month after the expansion launches, but I'm trying to find something a bit more exact. Yes, there's actually been a lot of confusion about this topic, and I've been thinking about making a standalone video just to clarify. Normal mode is 2 weeks after the release of the expansion. The release of the expansion, not early access. So it's Tuesday, the release in July. Then wait 2 weeks, not 2 weeks from the 28th of early access. Then another 2 weeks after normal mode is Savage. There's been an unusual amount of confusion that has boggled my mind, because for some reason, there's a bunch of people who seem to think that normal mode is coming out 4 weeks after the expansion. The exact quote Yoshi P said on stage was that normal and Savage would be releasing in sequence about 4 weeks after the expansion came out. That's their way of saying normal and Savage will both be out within a month. So people have thought that means 4 weeks to normal and another week for Savage. That's not what that means. So I want to clarify that, because I've had to clarify that a handful of times to people already. It's exactly the same as it's always been for expansion launch. If it was going to be different, They would have stopped and explained that it was going to be different and why it was different, because they spent like 6 hours explaining to us about removing belts going into the previous expansion. I think they could have taken 5 seconds if it was going to be different to be like, I know that's different from before, but you know, we have a good reason or something like that. No, it's exactly the same as it always was. 4 weeks until Savage after launch. I can't, if I say it like that now, it's like, does it mean 4 weeks from now? No, after launch. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Hope you're doing well. You too. With the recent content lull, as we wait for Dawn Trail and the seeming lack of content we got in Endwalker, I've noticed a ton of people have taken time to go back and play and interact with older content, something that was very prevalent in Shadowbringers as well when we got those big delays due to the vid. Sort of giving it a second revival. Eureka Bosie. Well, Eureka's never needed a second revival. Eureka's never been dead. Even had some content creators make some interesting series. In the downtime, Cider Spiders, achievement hunting. I don't know how he's doing all those achievements, man. The achievements in this game are so boring. Wrath Games solo only. Oh, yeah. That one. Okay. I didn't know the name of the person who was doing that, but when I realized, okay. My question is, why is the big content lull seen as an overall negative thing, especially when it seems like it has encouraged people who still want to play the game to try and do stuff they haven't already done? I think the game should not have any points for downtime. Okay, so the big thing is downtime in any game is expected. If you play a game that has no downtime, it basically consumes your life. And there are some people who actually want that. Final Fantasy 11 old school days, you know, OSRS, Maple Story, whatever. People want those things that they feel like they literally can never put down and play 16 hours a day and still have something to do the next day and the day after that. I think downtime is healthy. But there's a degree where you're okay with some amount of downtime and you're not okay with a certain length of downtime. Now, how much it affects your game in the end is a bit of a question mark. You know, if your game is good enough that every time there is something new, people resubscribe, then that's okay. But most people are okay with a few months, but when it's like nigh on 6-7 months that a player feels like they haven't had a reason to log in, but they've still kind of had the habit of logging in, they kind of grow resentful. It's why that recommendation of playing something else, it's kind of a meme, because like people throw it around like, well, if you don't like what you're playing, just play something else. But they say it like antagonistically, aggressively, and not like, you know, accepting criticisms that are genuinely valid. But it is a genuine thing to keep in mind that maintaining a healthy relationship with a game means being able to actually step away for a period of time. Now, whether or not it's because you were kind of pushed to an extreme because you tried to force yourself to play too long, or you just love the game too much, and so the disappointment when you don't have things to do is a bit more severe. Those are all variables that have to be considered. But it's impossible to have no content lulls at all. Somebody can always make content out of something, but that content is not for everyone. So it's up to each individual. And you're never going to convince someone that they should feel differently about a content lull. You shouldn't even try, in all honesty. If somebody's really disliking it, then they get to dislike it. It's their thing. It's if they try to drag other people down, where you tell them to kind of wind their neck in and just, get the heck out of the way. Bonus question, if you have time. You ever plan on releasing your initial playthrough of 7 Rebirth? I have it, but keep in mind, there's no anything. It's just me playing. So it's just gameplay, which I guess technically there's nothing wrong with, but I mean, I could put out my pre-release footage of me just literally wasting time trying to make sure I didn't miss anything, but do I want to? I'm not 100% sure. Hashtag new look every Monday with Mr. Happy. Damn right. Hi, Haps. Hi. Recently, I finally decided to start from the beginnings of Final Fantasy series and work my way up through the mainline games. A lot of people doing that after the last couple of years. Let's see. Only a handful of them I've actually seen the end credits of. About half of those I've played. So far, I've completed up to 6 and about to embark on my journey with Cloud & Company through 7. My question is, would you recommend using any quality of life mods for the Steam version or stick to the base experience? I think the only one of the PlayStation 1 games I would genuinely recommend modding is Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX was at the end of the PlayStation 1 era and suffered the most in the way of technical debt. Things that the game does, such as really, really long intros to the battles. They basically get longer going from 7 to 8 to 9, those battle intros, as well as a few other aspects of its gameplay that are largely fixed with the Moguri mod. There's options in there to reduce those loading times down so you don't have to wait as long in between battles. And then it'll come down to just individual taste. So Yeah, Final Fantasy 9 might be the only one I recommend, but 7 and 8 I think are fine as is to leave as is. I would really only mod them if you wanted to try stuff out, like there's a really big new threat mod for Final Fantasy 7, which I don't recommend for a first playthrough. And Final Fantasy 8 has a couple, but honestly, I don't really like any of the mods for 8. It's that Moguri mod for 9 that I would recommend, but not for 7 or 8. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? You're doing well. That's good. I think the day they announce less job restrictions for Glam is when we get an even bigger audience reaction than double die channels. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be more of a shock and awe kind of thing, because a lot of people want it, but it's definitely not the same kind of big as double die channels. So I think it'd be more like people going nuts that it's even possible. But and then people would just do it just to meme. You know, like to be like, I never thought about glamming white mage stuff on my tank before, but now I want to, you know, it's just that kind of moment. So it should be mentioned, the reason we're getting so many 9 references is a mystery spoiler. Do you think that at this point Solutions 9 name itself is the biggest hint we have? Yeah. I think Solution 9 as a whole is realistically the biggest tie together. It's not the only thing that we've seen that would be a tie together, but definitely the top of the food chain on that one. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hi. Thanks for answering the questions about Fates. I hope you're doing well. You too. The question is about the design of healers in 14, and I'd like your opinion. I know you're not an authority on stuff, especially not healers, because you do a lot of rating. I like your insights anyway. Healers are way too strong, even if minimizing the amount of healing you have to do to focus on damage is part of the fun. The fact that a third of your kit is straight up ignored for you to perform well feels like unintuitive design. While it's kind of fun in the high-end stuff, more casual content is very unengaging. So one, why not nerf OGCD healing in some capacity to make it not be the be-all end-all of healing? And 2, add new mechanics to GCD healing spells that so that casting them contributes to your damage in some way. Yeah, we touched upon this topic very similarly. It's kind of a rough spot to just straight up nerf OGCDs because they're not inherently too strong as individual skills. Like if your party is missing 80% of their health and you press a single OGCD heal with no other additional skills comboed with it, you're probably not going to be satisfied with whatever it is you just pulled off. A lot of the reason why you can kind of get away with that is because you have 2 healers doing that simultaneously, plus any mitigations you have, plus regen effects all stacked on top of each other. So it's kind of a rough spot where even if you were to nerf them, fundamentally, the way damage is dealt in the game, it doesn't change that much drastic. It changes it in casual content more than it changes it in hardcore content. So it would make that slightly more engaging, but there's also a lot less healing that's needed there at the same time. I think you genuinely need to kind of press the issue and again, create those decision-making moments where you have stuff that focuses on both healing and damage, but choosing to use it for one or the other becomes your primary decision-making, stuff like Macrocosmos and Numa. And then you have add mechanics to GCD healing spells that allow them to contribute to DPS in some way. Contributing is one thing. You have a choice. You can design them to minimize DPS loss in the case that you have to do a GCD heal, in which case the way that translates is, so I still lose DPS. Or you make all healing spells in the game damage neutral, which would mean that let's say you cast Cure 2, and instead of free Cure, it gave you and stoned. I don't know, and stoned not the best, whatever. It gave you no, that wouldn't even make sense. We don't even use stone anymore. It gave you a light aspected as a buff, a stacking buff. And for each one you cast, it increased the potency of your next glare, I guess we'll go with. You would need to make that buff essentially double the potency of glare. And then you would run into the situation where, well, what if I have to cast more than one at the same time? Like, what if I have to do back-to-back Cure 2? So then we make it a stacking buff. So then do we just make it so that glare gets this like infinitely stacking buff? No, it has to cap out somewhere. So what if they're in a situation where you have to cast more than 2? You see what I mean? Like, the problem is you either make it so you have to GCD heal no matter what, because you got to remember, even if you make that the case where GCD heal affects your damage abilities or provides DPS in some way, there still aren't enough scenarios in the game that you'd actually feel empowered. It would just be better than like free cure procs, as far as I'm concerned, you know. And most of the healing we do in the game is AoE. It's not very often single target heals, so you need to factor in your AoE healing versus your single target damage spells, which they've kind of struggled with in the past. I kind of get why, but you would essentially need to do both of these things and more to get kind of the achieved result to make number 2 even work in the first place. And that's the tough thing, because the entire game's agency on how often you need to heal across most content is not very high. So just giving damage buffs for healing only kind of works. Like White Mage is the best example when it comes to lilies, where you use a GCD on healing to get your damage buff, but you're doing it because you don't want to overcap on a resource and for movement, and because you can use it once a minute, and one of those minutes is going to line up with a buff window, and that's incredibly valuable. So there's like 3 layered reasons as to why you do that, as opposed to just, oh, it's damage neutral, whatever. You know, there's like a method to it. So it's not something that's so straightforward to fix. There's like a lot of different things that need to get mixed. Whereas what I've suggested, where a lot more skills having both a healing and damage component overall, is something that more like, it's something they could do without drastically uprooting everything else. I'm not saying it's what they should do, but I'm just showing you like how the different options weigh, and how the kind of way you have to change the game around these individual decisions is not so much in the vacuum. And I just provided, I guess, the most vacuum friendly option initially. Hashtag Mr. Mondays with Happy Hello. Hello, Happy. How you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. If there's 1 or 2 things you could bring into 14 from any other MMO, I feel like I just answered this the other week. Transmog from WoW. That was always the number 1 answer. And that's like the only answer. Like, could I say like another game's friends list? Or like, there's like probably a couple of other answers. Sure. But it's Transmog versus our current glamour system. That's definitely the winner. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hi. Hope you're doing well. You too. Been watching your stream since you started the game since I started the game at 2.4. I was going to say, I misread it and made it seem like you were accusing me of starting late. Yeah. Been a big fan ever since. Thank you. My question is, in 6.0, the crafted gear sets were dropped at the same time as Savage as Fidelis opening. Do you think they'll drop the crafted sets when they activate normal Arcadian? So you're measuring it up against the wrong thing. The crafted sets release when the tombstone releases, the capped tombstone. So the real question is will capped tombstones released the day of the day of Arcadian normal or Arcadian Savage? Most likely, crafted gear will drop the same day as Arcadian Savage. Hence, the tomes will drop the same time as Arcadian Savage. That's one of those things that they could have just not announced yet. That's changing. We don't know, but that's what we would have reason to believe, is that for the first tier and only the first tier of this expansion, that it would work the same as the previous ones. So yeah, we'll see. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, hi, and hope you're doing well. You too. I think of you and your cats when my 2 cats do something funny. My almost 1-year-old screams if he can't get to me. They are getting along good. Learned a lot while lurking with you and Ivy. So long story short, thanks for the help. And I completely get that we know you, but you've never seen us comment you made the other. Well, it wasn't a question, but yeah, cats. They're sleeping over there. I was going to go bug one of them. No, I'm going to take the peace and respite, and you'll definitely feel that need at some point. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hi. If they decided to add a new category of jobs to the game in future expansions, do you think they need to add 2 jobs into the category simultaneously? Yes. You cannot add a new category and only add 1 job, because then you basically are saying we're making 1 mandatory job for this entire expansion. In fact, we're making 1 mandatory job you have to take into every single party, and it's not optional. That's a not good idea as far as I'm concerned. And honestly, even 2 is too few. I'd say you'd need 3 with the landscape of the other jobs. But yeah, no, you can't just release 1 job in isolation as a new role and have an insert it. So the answer, yeah. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Happy. Hope you're happy. I'm happy. I'm currently leveling an alt, working on maxing Grand Company rank, which of course means squadrons. Do you think that since they have made trust for most dungeons now, they would update the squadron NPC AI? As far as I know, you need to run 5 unique dungeons with them for the final rank, and some of the ones I've tried are pretty much impossible since they don't do mechanics. No, the whole point of the squadrons is you have to manually tell them to do everything. That's it. Like, you just have to micromanage them. That's the entire way their system is built. Now, that being said, that doesn't really happen until Heavensward's leveling dungeons, where they actually need some kind of assistance. Otherwise, they're just so strong, they straight up power through everything. They massacre everything. Like, yeah, if a boss goes invulnerable and has ads, you need to pull them back and tell them to do something else. But your mistake is that you're just telling them to go forward, and that's the end of it. The exchange between squadrons and trusts is that squadrons are a billion times stronger than trusts, but they're dumb as dirt. Whereas trusts are smart, but do terrible, terrible amounts of damage. So that's the exchange you get. And no, I don't see them changing it. I don't really see a reason for them to change it. As for the remaining ranks that you mentioned here below, they've said they're not adding any more ranks unless they think there's a good reason to add them. And sincerely, I don't think there will ever be a good enough reason to add anything above captain. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Mr. Happy, and extra hellos for any who missed it. Hey, do you think they will split the 50, 60, 70, 80 roulette when the 90s get added? You know, a part of me wants to say yes, but a part of me really just wants to see how long this whole name gets longer and longer, bit goes on. Like some people want to call it the X, you know, X's, and the X is a variable. O roulette. Some people I just want to see them keep adding. I want to see 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, then 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, then 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, whatever they do after that. I think realistically, they just name change it and leave it as is instead of splitting it, but it is funny to me. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello there. Hi. Hope you're doing well. You too. In the one video, I believe in State of the Realm, you guys are speaking about how jobs felt great during Stormblood. I miss having original Enochian and Life of the Dragon where I had to manage the timer and keep the buffs up while fighting. I had a thought, what if like other MMOs, you could have a better version or rather spec to have these old mechanics back? Terrible idea. Whatever is best in terms of player, in terms of like the player's output. Now, okay. Let me continue because you might actually have a rebuttal. Speaking of how Endwalker is making things easy job-wise, thought it might be an idea to have an easy for casuals and a better spec for more damage. No, okay. So my answer was good. So I was going to say, you run into two problems. If you're the player using the easy spec, people just know that you're either A, lazy, or B, not good enough to play the job as it's intended, which means they don't invite you to groups. Like if you're just doing dungeons, people might not give a shit. Like you might have the occasional person who like just goes, oh my God, I can't believe you're using these, like whatever. Like, because people who are experienced can tell. They don't need a fancy abacus to tell whether or not you're doing it. When you've played the game long enough, you see when people are making clear mistakes, whether you're looking at the debuff bar, their animations while you're bored because you've already done that thing a million times, whatever, people notice it. But more importantly, the other option would be to have them do about the same damage, but to have one more engaging, one not. And that's also a problem because 99% of players will just go with the easy one. Why would they put the extra effort in to do the same amount of damage? So there's no winning. You either are going to actively cause grief and disdain and also create more work for the balance devs who now need to consider a hard to play balance and easy to play. Like, how do they get that right? That's like even more of a disaster than balance can sometimes be. Yeah, so I think you get the point. I don't think I need to beat it home anymore. So yeah, no, definitely no. They just need to be designed in a way that the player base finds them more engaging, have some simple options, some more complex options. And, you know, if I strike a balance in the design, not necessarily in the number or creating more imbalances by just adding a harder, easier version. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Haps. Hi. What are the chances we'll get a long boat ride to Tyrol like in TOAU or WoW? No. You're going to do a quest and it's going to be a cutscene and then you'll be there. They won't do that. There's no reason to. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, oh, Haps, and a couple of hellos in case someone's forgot theirs. Hello. The other day I put an idea of let's talk about the Dragoon rework thread in the official forums, looking for ideas for other players to try and have a bit of constructive feedback. Anyway, all the replies from the community were basically, well, the previous reworks for other jobs make me think in a pessimistic way. I want no changes. Dragoon is cool the way it is. Man, they don't see whereas Dragoon is cool. There's nowhere to go and needs to be improved, especially in the early levels. Big time on the early levels. Question is it naive to think the rework is going to be at least fine? Quite optimistic, specifically with the few words Yoshi P said regarding the content and jobs in the future. I think the thing is, past job reworks have largely worked. It's Summoner that people look at in the most direct manner. You have the occasional disdained Dark Knight who wants Dark Arts back, totally get it. And you have the occasional person who struggles with Machinist ping, which quite frankly, even if you played Heaven's Order Stormblood Machinist, was probably still a problem, just more of a problem now. But most of their reworks have been largely successful in terms of altering gameplay and still providing an enjoyable experience. Ninja, which is their benchmark, by the way, the 5.1 Ninja rework was their benchmark of description for Dragoon and Astro originally. We don't know if that's still the case. Was a generally enjoyed rework. It's when most people who felt they could have never played the job before got into Ninja. And it stayed largely the same in terms of its overall feel, its job aesthetic, and its power fantasy. They just moved a few things around, and then they even did a few more adjustments a little bit down the road. And the only place they really slipped up was the start of Endwalker, when they added in new abilities that didn't flow with that rework. So I feel like a lot of it is summoner pessimism and less for other jobs. And in which case, I think it's reasonable to think it will be fine, but thinking isn't reality. So it's just, we got to wait and see. And if it's not, feedback. It's worked up to this point for the most part. So feedback. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Haps. Hi. I wanted to know if you think there are any signs of housing growth during this expansion, or if you don't think they'll do anything until... Oh, they're 100%. Every expansion, they're always going to strive to have at minimum one housing growth time. I do wonder if they're working on any other systems. They probably know there's a great amount of disdain towards the way the housing system is made and how we're basically at the whims of the dev team to add more houses all the time, and there's nothing else. I think that was part of the reason why islands were outdoors, but I have to wonder if they have something else in the works. And some of the reason they're testing these other server alternatives is to make some of those things possible. That's my hope, but I can guarantee you that you can feel safe that there will be more housing added sometime in 7.x. When, who knows, but sometime. Hello, Mr. Happy, for a round of hashtag Mondays with Mr. Stripe. That was last week, not this week. My question is one thought I spawned while watching your video about the most liked and disliked dungeons of the game. That is, would Unreal Dungeons be a good idea? Like Unreal Trials, but in dungeon form? I actually don't think this is a bad idea, but I think they would probably stay away from a lot of the dungeons that were voted against. So not a bad idea. The big thing for me is that I don't think, and I think the dev team honestly agrees with this as well, that dungeons are the place to bring old content up to new content, because they don't even want to make as many dungeons, period. One dungeon per patch now. Why would they then also go back and now bring an old dungeon up to max level, go through the balancing that it takes? Because it's not a simple number change. You have to QA these things and it has to go back and forth. That's a whole process. And so Aloha? What are you doing? Hey, you got a fur ball? Yeah? Aloha. Hey, you're just licking your lips. What are you licking your lips for? Bro, he's like, did you find something like food? You better not have swallowed something you weren't supposed to. I'm going to be very upset with you if you did. There's no toys or anything around. All right, anyway, between the questions, I'll keep an eye on him. Yeah, so that's the biggest problem is they don't want more dungeons now, and they're going to have to do the work to make sure a dungeon is in a releasable state. Why would they do it with an old dungeon? Like, the idea is fine. I just don't think the devs are going to see it in such a way that it makes sense to actually do. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Hope you had a good weekend. Pretty good. I chilled a lot. Like I said, after releasing that video, I chilled for the most part this weekend. In your State of the Realm episode with Arthur's re-adding stress back into the game, crafting and gathering was briefly touched on. To me, the biggest issue with crafting right now is there little or no skill expression. Anyone can just hit max level and press a macro to easily craft the top level stuff. There's pretty much zero difference between a person who doesn't even know what the buttons actually do and someone that actually cares about the systems. Yeah, that's why I suggested they need something that's closer to master crafting for more types of recipes, because that's where you get skill expression. I mean, you also need to make it so that the actual act of doing those, like reacting to things happening and changing your craft based on it, you need to make sure that that's not an aggravating experience at the same time, but it also needs to be something you can't eventually just macro for like a bare minimum chance. As someone you aren't really engaging with crafting and gathering, are there any changes Square Enix could do to interest you? No, I do not think you should. I think the reason it's like this right now is because people like me with crafting and gathering, the people who actually like wanted to do it, like I'm like, okay, I just don't like it. I don't want it changed. Like, let the people who enjoy it. The problem is people like me who don't want to do it, who do want to do it, are the ones constantly saying like, you know, oh, it's too complicated. It's too this, it's too that. And I think that's why it is the way that it is, to make it more accessible to that degree. But it's funny because they made it more accessible while also adding the tools in game to better accommodate doing it without guides and macros. So it was like kind of backwards in the way that they did that versus just adding the things that make doing the crafting more easy to kind of calculate and finesse. Like they should have just released that on its own, and then, you know, if something needed to go happen down the line, then do something later. But they overcorrected, and I think that's because of people that don't want to do crafting but wanted to get into it, and they're just like, okay, let's lower the floor. But I also think they lowered it too much, because even I'm still not interested in it, and it's like the easiest it's ever been. So don't make content for people that don't want to do that content in the first place. Make it for the people who want to do it and are engaging with it, because that's how you make that part of the player base, you know, you please them versus trying to please the people who didn't want to do it in the first place. Hashtag happy question day. That's a good one. Hey, Haps. Hi. 2 questions for you this week. Cool. This pertains to the stat squish discussion. Do you think it's possible for them to just make old level caps like 50 and 60 be a single item level difficulty of content? So for all level 50 content, be item. So anything that's just tweaking numbers, it takes a lot of work, but it is possible. There's no reason it couldn't be. How that affects the grand scheme of a character's progression, a bit of a question mark. I mean, because that, you got to remember, it's not just changing the content, or it's not even just changing the gear. It's changing all of the content to match that item level, which is a lot of QA work. But if you're doing that, or, you know, if that's like an expansion release level thing, that's where you exhibit that kind of effort. So possible, but like whether or not that's the route they want to take, or if that there's, they think it's more or less, I don't know, because you're gonna have to do it when you do level squishes and stat squishes. You're gonna have to do that kind of stuff anyway, so this might actually save workload in all theory. It's about raid gearing. Do you think adding an extra book or totem to Savage would help with gearing? I think having more content that rewards totems or upgrade materials or even other armor sets is more important than adding more stuff to Savage. That's my personal opinion. Like if Criterion had better loot and had loot that could help you get, you know, just raise your item level on both the job you're already playing and other jobs, that to me is more valuable than giving even more stuff to Savage players. Eventually you have to add more stuff to Savage players, because as more and more jobs get added, the amount of books and the amount of loot will not keep up. It's the same thing with them adding totems and loot, you know, more loot to the EX trials. It'll have to happen here too, and they've already done some adjustments. But no, without a doubt, they will have to do something like this at some point in the future. Hashtag Mondays with Mrhappy. Hey, Haps. Hi. Hope you and the cats are doing well. Speaking of him, he coughed up a small furball. That's why he was licking his lips. I just cleaned that between questions. My question for you, have you played Persona 3 and P3 Reload? I played Persona 3, what is it called, Fez, back on the PS3. How would you rate it against P5? So I can't rate Reload. I haven't played Reload. So I'm glad to see that it looks like getting around Tartarus is a way better ordeal than it was in the original 3. And that to me is enough, because 3, I mean, otherwise, I find all the Persona games outside of the dungeon delving experience to be nigh identical, and which is a good thing, because I like that part of the game. So then it comes down to individual character, friendships, relationships, advancements, you know, so it's that's whatever. I don't even judge those parts of the game against each other. But the fact that the exploration is better means I would sooner pick up P3 Reload than pick up Persona 4, unless Persona 4 gets that same treatment at some point, which, let's be honest, it probably will. Hashtag Mondays with Mrhappy. Yo, hello, greetings, etc. Having caught up to Eureka and Bosia, I've been wondering how prevalent was the use of tanking essences and spirits and incense actions on DPS healers. Mandatory. Like everybody, especially in Bosia, if you didn't bring an essence, you're griefing. Bottom line. Now, of course, it depended on what you were trying to do. A lot of people did bring straight up DPS essences, but, you know, for the serious bosses and whatnot, yeah, I mean, everybody had to use their, you know, role essences and whatnot. Yeah, it was very, very, and in Eureka, even now to this day, bringing actions is a world of difference. So while it's not important for like the newbies, generally people who are going through for the first time with pre-cleared groups who are just kind of either doing carries or teaching runs or whatever, they'll ask you to bring essences and stuff, but there are also some that don't really mind if you don't bring any important actions or don't spend money on that stuff. They'll also very regularly give out that kind of stuff, so you don't have to go out of your way to get it, just to make life a little bit easier, because they have so many of them, they don't know what to do with it anyway. But yeah, no, it was very important stuff on release. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Howdy, Happy. Hi. Which expansion is, sorry, I'm trying to pet Aloha at the same time. Which expansion is your favorite set of relic weapons? I'm not going to lie. I don't even remember what half of the relic weapons in this game look like. In fact, I don't even remember what I have done all the Zodiac weapons. I couldn't honestly tell you what more than 2 of them look like. I couldn't describe it to you. I've done 2 animal weapons. I actually know what those both look like. I couldn't tell you what almost all the Eureka weapons look like, minus like the Pyros Knuckles and like the White Mage Staff, maybe the Warrior Axe too. I know what that one looks like. and Bozia. Actually, I know a lot of the Bozia designs, and a lot of them I'm not a fan of, but the ones I like, I really like. And Endwalker, I'm pretty okay with the aesthetic across the board. Some still look better than others, but I like a lot more of them than I don't like, and that's across all the steps. I don't know. I actually think the Manderville weapons are among the better looking sets that we've had. I think that in terms of the absolute best looking ones, very few of those would be Manderville. I think you'd probably go back to the Zodiac and Animal weapons for a lot of those. But I couldn't say like a whole expansion that has a favorite set. I don't remember what enough of them look like. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Yo, Mr. Happy. Hi. Dawn Trail will be the first expansion I'll be in coming out. And I was wondering what I should do to be prepared for it. So I am going to do a preparation video, but it's actually kind of a regurgitation of previous videos I've done. I just always release it to be timely. There's only a few things you really need to have done. You generally want to be caught up on the story, for example, and if you can be done with any side quests or raid quests ahead of time, it's not a bad idea. Sometimes there's quests we don't know are going to exist that tie into old stuff, and it's really nice to get a continuation of those, but that's not something you can deliberately kind of prepare for. As for more specifics, like for example, if you're planning on leveling one of the new jobs, it really helps to have Wondrous Tales set up the week before. So like literally the week you're waiting for Dawn Trail before that Friday rolls around, you do a Wondrous Tales. Actually, I'm sorry, with the way it works, you can do it the week before that even, because it'll be on a Friday as long as you're playing during early access. Yeah, the week before the weekend of early access, before even Tuesday rolls around, you do a Wondrous Tales, get it ready to turn in, and then you can turn that in for half a level, and then you can take another one technically and do another one for another half of a level. So that's a free entire level that you've gained on just Wondrous Tales. But some people also prep like, you know, tribal dailies, and some people do like, you know, leave quest turn in preps, but those are usually like way overkill because those get nerfed when you go above the current level cap anyway. So there's a handful of things, but honestly, as long as you're caught up with the story, have a little bit of guild tucked away in case there's something you want, and try to be as close to max item level as possible, which isn't even necessary. It just means you don't have to worry about gear for a few levels. That's it. And pre-order to get the earring, of course, which the earring does work for the first level just from monster kills, but from the first level. So that's another little bit that's nice. All right, and the recording's been going on for quite some time now, so I'm going to rapid fire through. The rest of these rapid fire just means nothing on the screen and no editing. So here we go. One asked what my beef was with Stone Vigil hard mode. It's as unengaging as the rest of the Realm Reborn dungeons. The second boss is the worst dungeon boss I've ever fought, and the third dungeon boss is among the most boring of the non-traditional dungeon bosses I fought as a whole. I think it's way better than even the most simple dungeons like Sestasha, which really don't ask almost anything of the player. Copperbell as well has been perfectly fine since they changed it. In fact, it's better now than it was back then if we're talking about less annoying dungeons. Pharaoh Sirius, what's it called, is one of the more engaging dungeons, so it's definitely worse than Pharaoh Sirius. Fantastic dungeon. Pre-Endwalker Cache and Praetorium, those were fine. There was nothing wrong with those dungeons at all. They were just long, so people didn't like doing them, and of course having to watch the cutscenes, but the functional dungeons were perfectly fine. It was just people just didn't want to do it. As an Armored Core player, I've heard about a lot of people supposedly couldn't beat the first boss of 6. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to remember, Armored Core is not an easy game. And that first boss is the hardest first boss of any Armored Core game. But I'm still surprised, but I'm not really that surprised. Sorry, I didn't edit only because Aloha was being ultra annoying. We had one here. Why not use the PvP actions and skills for normal content? What? This person's writing a joke. This person's a waste of my time. Another hello, if someone forgets theirs. Do you think they'll ever revert Trick Attack? You mean to make it 60 seconds? I hope Ninja goes back to having a 60-second cooldown for the whole party. I think that was one of the only, like, engaging things. I mean, we need more than just that. Other jobs need something equivalent. We need at least 3, probably 3 jobs minimum that have some sort of 1-minute cooldown kind of thing, but... oh, yeah, no, I hope they do. Do you see a world in which 14 updates their anti-cheat? There is no anti-cheat. They can't do anti-cheat because it's a legal concern in a lot of countries out of the world. So, yeah, no, they're never, ever going to add that. Maybe they take reports on it more seriously or investigations more seriously, but no, they're never going to add anti-cheat into the game because they would have to delist the game in like half of Europe if they did that, and they're not going to do that. What was the game you forced yourself to play through even though you didn't like it? Xenoblade Chronicles 2, one of the most... like, I don't even want to get into it too much. That game sucks, all right? I think that game's, there we go. I got to throw in the opinion aspect because people won't know. I had to say, I think that game was terrible. I gave it a kind of fair review because it was more, I was like, maybe it's just not for me. But the more I've looked back on it, that game is despicable to me. And I only 100%ed it out of spite, so I could say that with absolute certainty. Let's see. Crystal Conflict, rank, Oibrov, new player, started playing the game. 640 sets are the best way to gear up. Scared about gearing up your jobs. Gearing in this game is ultra easy. When an expansion comes out, you just get uncapped tombstone gear and EX trial stuff. And then you can get the normal mode gear if you want to, or you can just wait for crafted gear to come out 2 weeks after that. Crafted gear is always going to be your fastest catch-up mechanic. And then savage content will be how you get your, and cap tombstones will be how you get your gear from there. At least on patch. You know, eventually you'll have, 24-mans and hunts giving you upgrade mats, stuff like that. Let's see. Have a bonus of a steak-flavored protein shake. That is not a bonus. Want to know what chair I use? This is a Herman Miller Aeron, I believe is the name of the chair. And it is extremely expensive, but I definitely recommend it. Although my at this point I've had it like 8 years, and the 8 years now, it's been 7, it's been 6 or 7. The handrail things have like started to like peel away, but that's it because everything else is mesh, so it's not like the whole chair is coming apart. Then we had misunderstood where you talked about limit breaks and buffs, but do limit breaks get affected by buffs? No, they do not. My point last week is that if limit breaks are their own just skills that aren't affected by buffs, then you just don't use them during buff windows and they just fill in non-buff time. But it's just an extra cooldown that fills in non-buff time, which is not that interesting to use. Let's see. No. Talking about 7 on Mog Talk. Yeah. A lot of people commenting on that one wild comment from last week. There's a problem with the collector's editions. I couldn't afford the collector's edition, so I bought the digital regular PS5. I also never bought the collectors for Endwalker. Problem is the collectors is still $80 in the store. So I'm going to pay $80 for a mount and a weapon. Yeah, so you need to specifically buy the collector's edition upgrade. I don't know where you buy that, if you have to go to the store online to buy it, or if you have to wait. I think what people told me last time was that there is an option, but that I'm trying to remember because people had this same concern in the previous expansions, and there was an answer, but I've never done it. So it's kind of wrong for me to try to give the correct answer. You can upgrade it. I just don't know what the exact step is to do that. Kingdom Hearts centric question. Fell off the series around Union Cross. Just didn't like the direction it was going. How do you feel about the state of Kingdom Hearts? I don't care about the state of Kingdom Hearts. If Kingdom Hearts 4 comes out and it reignites my interest, great, I'm going to play it. But I'd be lying if I said it was something I was like excited for. It's more like a, let's see what they do. Maybe after Kingdom Hearts 3, they'll start making a decent Kingdom Hearts game again. And then we had, why do you want Blues to do ultimates? Because more ways to engage with the game, especially for a job with limited ability to engage with the game, is more content, which is a good thing. So there's no reason not to do it. And I think the biggest reason, honestly, is their excuse for not doing it was really lame. It's, we don't want to undermine the accomplishment of Ultimate Raiders. Bro, Ultimate Raiders are the ones asking for it. They want to do it with Blue Mage. So you're not, they clearly don't think you're undermining it. So why should you? They're the ones actually doing it. And I think that might be, no, here we go. We got another one. They're at the bottom now. So it means they're either downvoted or, I don't know, YouTube's algorithm decided they didn't like it. What are your thoughts on making classes relevant again? No, there's no good reason to do it. It's a waste of development time. And then no comments. Last comment unhinged. Blah, blah, blah. The 8th millionth comment about getting sleep, even though I've said a billion times that I genetically have circles under my eyes. Everyone in my family does. It's not an iron deficiency. It's not a sleep deficiency. We all just look like this in my family. So, that is what it is. And I think that's it. I think there was a question also that I skipped somewhere in the middle. That was more like a comment. I think it was about the limit break related stuff, but it was like a different perspective on it, but it wasn't really a question. So I skipped it. But that also means it's kind of hard for me to go back and address it. So that is what it is. Anyway, That is going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Thank you for everyone who asked the questions last week. And if you have questions for next week, put them in the comment section of the video below. Don't forget to check out the sponsor Factor. They didn't sponsor this video, but they're sponsoring me over on Twitch. So if you use them, that really helps support the channel. And again, thank you to everyone who helps contribute towards the personal update video that I put out last week, because like I said, I got that all taken care of. It was, I set a goal for $2,000. We got there, like I said, in one stream, and that's all I need. I'll take care of the rest from here, doing the same content I've always done, the usual I always do. Not going to make any bigger a deal about it, but thank you to anyone who did contribute to that and who came by that stream. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, take care.